Well, Robert, let's get into it. It's great to have you
So-
on the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us
Cheers,
today.
Pleasure.
Already had a brilliant chat and time in the little coffee we had before
Yeah.
the pod. But just tell our audience, if you could, Robert, a little bit about your football journey and
Yeah.
what happened in your life.
Okay. Football journey. Obviously, like everyone, play football from a really, really young age. Lived on a big council estate. My brother was 7 years older than me because my mum lost one in between us. So my early football development was my brother took me everywhere. He was unbelievable, so he took me everywhere. So my early football development was playing football 7, 8 with like 13, 14, 15-year-olds. So I didn't know it at the time, but straight away that gets you thinking about environments because my traits then was not fearless, tough tackling, didn't care because that's what I was around. I was playing with older kids. And then I got picked up by Fulham at 10. And doing well, but I had a really bad injury at 16. And that kind of curtailed anything in terms of me being a pro or playing at level I wanted to play. So I kind of kept trying to come back, but the injury I sustained caused all sorts of other injuries that really I couldn't play at a level that I would have liked to have tried to play at really. But again, those things, when I look back at the things that happened in my career, it sort of took me into my coaching, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I was very left-sided dominant. And apparently part of my injury was caused that I was so left-sided dominant.
Okay.
I had no equilibrium. So when my left side fell apart and it got injured, my body fell apart.
Okay.
So again, that started when I went into coaching. You start thinking about developing two-footed players, not just because of the decision making, but also because of the body and having that equilibrium and equal strength both sides. So so then when football playing come to an end, I wasn't in a great place, and I come out of football for a considerable amount of time, and I went and worked uptown in the West End for a music company, which was fascinating, and I learned so much in terms of people skills. So I got myself to a good level there. I was out on the road, and it was all to do with music licenses, Jimmy. So I had to license like pubs, nightclubs, restaurants, because you have to have permission to play music. It's all to do with royalties, basically. And tough job. So Southeast London, going into pubs, getting money out of people. So like massive in terms of people skills. Yeah. And then just really, obviously I didn't lose the love for football, but I kind of, and then they had a team there, a football team, a work team, who used to go over to Holland every year and play the Dutch version. And they played at the old De Meer Stadium, the old Ajax Arena. Wow. And they used to get absolutely battered every year, like 5, 6, 7-0. So they asked me to do some sessions over at Regent's Park, which I did 5, 6 sessions, and then I went over with them. Anyway, they won. They won 4-2, and the elation was unbelievable. And seeing the reaction of the Dutch guys, they were going like, "What's going on?" And then all of a sudden, I just got this real buzz and thought, "This is what I've got to do." So then I had the problem. I had a really good job. I was earning good money, and I thought, "No, I want to coach. This is incredible." So and you kind of lose your contacts in football after a while, you know. So it was like, well, how do I do this? And so basically, I had a chance meeting with a guy I was at Fulham with, who was older than me, and he was doing the under-9s at AFC Wimbledon, who then were a non-league club, so it was all grassroots. And then, but I decided to set up a business with my wife, so I borrowed a substantial amount of money, and the thinking behind it was, if the business goes well, that will allow me to start coaching. Unfortunately, little did I know, most businesses go bust in 5 years, but the business did go well. It went really, really well. My wife ended up running that. That allowed me to start coaching. And then, that's how it started. Really.
Fantastic. And it's so interesting, Robbie, you talked about, and it's clear speaking with you sort of when we had the coffee and stuff, how all these experiences have informed, obviously, your life approach, but also your coaching. Yeah. So you talked about like the adversity that you faced in that job in the music industry. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about sort of that openness to learning and how that sort of also stayed with you? Like some of your experiences, even the most difficult ones, have helped you in your career and your perspective.
I mean, when I was playing, I always found just love football. So the tactical side, the decision making side, I was very technical, but only on left-footed. You know, my passing ability was fantastic with my left foot. But I do, you know, I remember playing games and the coach shouting, keep him on his right, and the frustration that, you know, I could see the same runs when the ball was on my right, but I couldn't make the decisions I wanted. So that formed things when I went into coaching. It's like, well, how great would it have been if my right was as good as my left, and I had that, you know, because it affects your decision making. And then, all those things, and going out my comfort zone in the job. You know, I always captain teams, but in terms of the situations that job put me in, the music license job, and putting me in front of people who basically wanted to, you know, I had one guy in South London said, I'm going to chop you up and spread you out all over South London. You know, so you've got a decision make. Do I leave or do I hold my ground? And I worked with some guys who taught me about behaviour and how you can build contact connections with people and stuff. So there was all these different experiences, you know, even when I started at AFC Wimbledon, and Nigel Higgs, who you know well, asked me to set up the youth structure, I'd got to a stage where I was really comfortable one-on-one with people. But I thought, you know, if you're going to build an academy as such from nothing, you've also got to inspire people, groups of people. And I wasn't overly confident in talking to big groups, so I went and did tour guides at Chelsea, like once, twice a week. So I went there and took tours to build up my confidence in public speaking. And again, you know, you talk about coming out your comfort zone. I've turned up there. One of the guys was a radio DJ. The other tour guy, he was an Elvis impersonator. One was a part-time actor. One was a cab driver. So you've got these real, like, effervescent characters. You know what I mean? And I'm thinking, where do I fit into this? So I had to find my own little niche. And again, all those experiences, and, you know, and then I look at that in football, where it can be quite an insular industry, you know, and you know, Nigel, again, who asked me to form the academy, not only wanted to produce footballers, but he wanted to produce people who could do well in life. And, you know, and it just got me thinking about all these things. So there's so much I could tell you, but we had a huge player ownership program at AFC Wimbledon, you know, which I can elaborate on.
So talk a little bit about how you started at AFC Wimbledon, what happened in the end, and a little bit about that program too.
So, I went in there and I had this under-9 group, basically. That's where I started, was with an under-9 group, grassroots football. So, you know, we were playing other Sunday league sides, because I said AFC Wimbledon, although they had the first team were just coming out the Ryman Prem, so, you know, it wasn't professional football. So the lads were just playing normal Sunday league grassroots football, and I had this under-9 group, and I think at the time they were playing probably 7-a-side. And I just started to introduce things around, little bits around ownership, so I used to let them do their own warm-ups and stuff like that, you know, even though they were young. But things like, you know, you'd play teams and the opposition, you'd know they'd have this big centre-forward who was scoring loads of goals. So because I wanted to get behaviours into them, you know, relevant as they got older, you know, so I'd do things like, if they left their big centre-forward on his own, I'd get our goalkeeper to mark the centre-forward so that we could get overloads further up the pitch and play. And of course we'd lose like 6-4 because we'd lose the ball, they'd pick it, and the parent, and it's getting that balance, because the parents want to win, and winning is important, I think, at all ages, that winning mentality, but you should have that as a kid anyway. But we'd lose games 6-4 because obviously they put it up to the big centre forward, he'd round our keeper, and the parents would be going, oh yeah, but can't we just sometimes leave it? And I went, no, you have to trust me. Like, these behaviours I'm instilling now, when they go to 11-a-side and there's offsides, you know, you just have to trust me. So it was tough, because you're trying to sell this kind of image to people, and you know, and we had all the other coaches were parent coaches, so I did things like that under 9. And when they got to 11-side, Jimmy, it was amazing. I mean, they won 104 games on a spin. And it wasn't through talking about winning. It was just installing certain behaviours at a young age, and not making winning everything, but making development everything, if that makes sense.
I know it's a long time ago in your career, but can you remember how you communicated that to parents? What did you have to show them evidence? How did they get on board with that idea?
I would just sit and talk to them, you know, because and explain why I'm doing it. And I said, look, you know, you got to understand, if yeah, okay, if I change for this game, one, you have to be consistent in what you're doing, and you have to trust me that as the boys get older, everything I'm doing now is going to work for their development moving forward. So the fact that we might lose a game that you really wanted to win, as long as I'm dealing with the boys and they're understanding why they're doing it, it's not an issue. It doesn't mean that winning doesn't matter, but you can't let an obsession with winning get in the way of their development. Because it has no relevance to where they want to go. So the opposition leaving this lad up top on his own because he's the biggest, strongest, quickest, you're doing that lad a disservice. So by the same token, if I'd taken over a team who was doing that, I would have stopped that, because you just, it's not relevant to their pathway.
To their development.
To their development. Yeah. So it was just lots of little conversations, So, and as I said, and then because the success started to come, the winning, it then becomes, you build the trust anyway.
Yeah.
Then when I'd had, I don't want to talk about the winning as success, but the development as success, and the byproducts of that was they just kept winning loads and loads of football matches.
And playing in a way.
Dominating the ball, understanding space, all these things. And then Nigel sort of had got wind of this. And you've got to remember that it was all parent managers at that time, and he just come to me and said, look, we obviously want to be a professional football club, and we need to kind of run the youth structure closer to, at the time it was Centre of Excellence, it wasn't. So if we do get back into League Two and professional football, we can get Centre of Excellence status. So he gave me the task of doing that. And, it was difficult because you had parent managers, really passionate people, great people, but, the kind of winning was everything. The discipline record wasn't great at the club, because your usual thing, you get at Grassroots, people arguing. So you had to change the mindset, and gradually I started to bring in sort of coaches, who could take the teams and things like that, and then start putting in place a programme. So that was a long process, and eventually the first team did get promoted, and then we've got to try and then get Centre of Excellence status, and there was loads of decisions to make. It's like, do we now start taking on releases from Chelsea or maybe QPR, Brentford, or do we stick with our lads who have played Sunday League football? So I then had that decision, because Nigel, got to remember, Wimbledon was a fan-owned club. So it was very much part of the community. The culture was always going to be a massive thing. Nigel wanted to develop really good people as well as good players. So I've then got that decision. It's like, and it was a brave one. It was like, no, we're going to stick with our Sunday League lads. Now, it might take a little bit longer, but at least they know the club. They know what the club's about, and the culture was a huge thing. So we stuck with our Sunday League boys, and it took time to get up to the levels, but we did it.
So that's a massive job, right? Creating a whole structure from one team. Can you recall? Well, I'm sure you can recall, Mark. What are the main sort of principles that you instilled? Where did you start? Is, I guess, my question.
The first thing I started at was, I looked at it. I thought, right, we're now in the professional leagues. We've got to get Centre of Excellence status, and you go, everyone's got like a 12 to 14 year head start on us, because the Centre of Excellence has been out for a long time. So my big thing was, I'm going, well, if we're going to produce professional footballers, and we want to produce sort of empowered young men who can, if they don't make it as a player, can go on to be successful in life, you look and you go, well, if we're running the same programme as everyone else, what makes us think that we're going to have success? So if I'm doing the same as Brentford or QPR or Chelsea even though we've got very, very limited resources. So I looked and go, well, where can our success be? So I had this thing about the two-footed academy, so I wanted us to be the two-footed academy, and we had processes around that, which included your dad, which was great, that come in. I said, so that was our big thing, and I looked at, and I thought, socially and psychologically, I wanted to run a program that was beyond anything that was out there. So, because you look at the players you're getting, Jimmy, we're kind of getting, I don't mean this in a rude way, but we're not getting the best players. The best players are going to Chelsea, Arsenal, Tottenham, Fulham, West Ham, and then probably Brentford, QPR. We're pretty much at the bottom in terms of the talent we were getting. So it's like, well, we got to run a program that levels that out. So the technical side was massive. And I was so fortunate that Nigel knew a friend of your dad, and because I was big on the technical side of things, I got to know your dad.
Yeah.
And we had loads of great conversations, and he gave his time. Gave his time to me personally, but also would do 4 or 5 sessions a year for me. And I learned so much in terms of, you've got the high repetition to improve the technique, but then how does that lead to decision making?
Yeah.
And how do you then go from high repetition sessions where you're building up technique and skill base to then sessions where they're getting the chance to use that in decision making? So although we didn't run a curve of program, but so much of what the conversations I had with your dad helped me form what we wanted to do.
Yeah.
And then I stole an idea that our lads wore a different colour sock on their weaker foot. So it basically,
that's a good idea.
because I believe, it's you're only getting these lads 2-3 times a week.
Yeah.
So they also need to take a massive responsibility for their own development.
Yeah.
So basically in training, they would wear a different colour sock on their weaker foot. And the whole target was, can you earn the right to wear the same colour socks? So we did it even on match days. So they'd have a blue sock on their stronger foot, yellow on their weaker. And again, you've got to deal with parents and even coaches on this, because no matter what anyone says, everyone loves to win football matches. So, of course, I've got coaches going, yeah, but they're going to show them in on their weaker foot. And I go, yeah, great. So when they eventually cut inside and bend one in the top corner, brilliant. But you have to stick with the process, and you have to go through failure. If you're going to achieve anything in life, you have to be willing to go through failure. You can't stay safe and stay comfortable. You've got to go through a period where you're not having success to have success. And we did. We developed, lots of 2-footed players who I believe wouldn't have had the careers they had if they were 1-footed dominant. People, Jimmy, will always throw things at you like, but what about Messi and what about that? And it wasn't that we didn't work on their super strength. So if we had a lad who had a great left foot, of course we wanted it to make that a super strength. But I'd argue with anyone, but still being at least efficient on your right will still help him.
Yeah.
And Messi was incredible, but I used to show parents clips of Lionel Messi going through on full speed, and scoop passing over the goalkeeper with his right foot. So don't tell me he didn't have a right. He had a right foot. Yeah. It's just his left foot was such a genius. He didn't need it, but he had a right foot. Trust me. So, and you show examples. Frank Lampard scored, I think, 22% of his goals with his right foot. So you take away that 22%, he's no longer Chelsea's top goal scorer in history. Yeah. So you show people the kind of effect these things can have. Johnny Wilkinson scores the drop kick for England in the World Cup with his right foot. He's left-footed. He chooses his right because he's got pressure coming from his left-hand side. So if it stayed with his left, the ball could have got charged down. He's gone with his right. Now you can find videos of Johnny Wilkinson cheating himself to be 2-footed. So that one moment changed rugby history. Yeah. He hasn't got the, so over time, if you educate people, they come on board, but it takes time.
That is, the parallels also. So if I think about the grassroots game, Robbo, you've obviously got probably one training every week, and you've got a match day. And what we're trying to say always is use match day as an extension of training, because we've only got the kids once a week. So that repetition work you talked about, there's not enough time really to do it. Let's take a small deflection before getting back to AFC Wimbledon. What do you think in terms of grassroots sessions? I'm talking about under 12s here, which is most of our audience are coaches of that age group. Yeah. What do you think, if you're looking at a season, Robbo, what would be your general objectives of that season at that age group, so 8s through 12s? Yeah. What are you trying to do for your players in training and in match days?
Well, fundamentally, for my approach is player first, player last. So you're trying to develop those individual players and to make them the best that you can make them. So, as you said, it's very difficult. It's a balance in training. But if everything becomes about winning the game, then what you end up doing, you just end up coaching a team that could be very efficient. Yeah. But you're not coaching the individual. So I just think you've got to get that balance right of and using your time of having a program where you're improving them, whether it's technically, well, certainly technically, but you're also finding time within that session to take it into game scenarios where there's chaos, so that the brain's working and it's not. So you have your structured bit where where you're getting high repetition, high detail, and then you're taking it into games where there's maybe chaos. But I think what's key is that, you know, if you're working on a particular skill, it's got to lead into the game that you do. Yeah. So that, you know, so if you're working on 1v1s in your unopposed section, well, don't just have a game where there's not an opportunity to have 1v1s. You know,
so it's linked.
It's all got to be linked. Yeah. So just try and plan and try and link it. Yeah. And also don't try and fit. You know, if you've only got them for an hour and a half, don't try and cover everything. Yeah. You know, be confident that if you have a way of working, and you might go, well, for 4 weeks we're going to work on this. Yeah. But also, I think what's key, Jimmy, is if you can have a player ownership environment as well, and you can encourage them in their spare time, or I should say inspire them in their spare time to be improving, then that will help your program, because you're never ever gonna, you know, time's so limited. Yeah. But if you can inspire the players in a way that you go, well, look, you know, if you find 20 minutes there and 20 minutes here to go and work on these things, and then you've got a chance of really seeing improvement. But definitely it's got to be linked. I think if it's too random, you're working on something and that doesn't lead to the game. But I do also think you've got to have that element of chaos, because that's when the brain's really working, you know, and players working out how to find space, because fundamentally that's key as well. You got to educate players to find space and make space and create space.
Robert, how do you inspire players? And obviously this might tap into your managerial career as well. Yeah. Have you got some tips for grassroots coaches on how, I think one of them's through personality, right? That connection that you can develop through with a player. Have you got any other tips about how to inspire players to do the work they need to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think if anything now, it's easier. I mean, as much as I think you've got to be really careful with technology, and certainly phones with young people, because, you know, I've seen a real change in young people because of phones, and I had the benefit, you know, when I started, phone wasn't a problem, so the social side of football was brilliant. Yeah. Now with phones, you see, you know, they're straight to their phones, but you have got that thing that you can have, you know, WhatsApp groups, and if you're teaching them something, you can link it to a video and send it to them to inspire them and say, look, this is what so-and-so achieved because he did this. So, you know, you have got that, but I think just being creative in making sure that what the message that you're teaching, you can show them examples to sort of light fires in them, you know. But I think, and as well, just be big on positive reinforcement, again with players, because if you're stretching them and you're trying to get them to do things, they're going to have failure. So encourage them to do it more. Yeah. And when they have success, like, celebrate that success. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Really celebrate that success with them as a player, and make and you know, I've got processes in training, Jimmy, where a lot of it is, which I've taken from sort of low, I don't want to say low level, but, you know, grassroots, that I used at Chelsea with like 18-year-olds, you know, because people want to feel good about themselves, right? And I think that's really important, to celebrate those successes. You know?
So that's applicable in both worlds, the grassroots and the programme. You think that there's a transfer of...
It's applicable right up to the top level. And I've got examples where I'm at Chelsea and I'm getting World Cup winners coming down, and listen, they just love football and they love enjoying playing football. You know. And I have processes in place where a lot of it was based around positive reinforcement, and also putting demands on each other when those behaviours weren't there. Yeah. You know, and I've got World Cup winners buying into this stuff and just loving it.
Oh, you know? Brilliant.
Because we all love it. You know? Yeah. You only have to go on YouTube and watch clips of players doing warm-ups, you know, funny, you know, they're all kids. They all revert back to kids, you know, definitely.
That's a good segue, Robbo, to go back to Wimbledon. So obviously you did all that work over multiple years, which must have required stamina, hard work, perseverance. Yeah. When you got towards the end of your time developing the Centre of Excellence that then turned into an academy?
So Centre of Excellence was actually only a year. Okay. So that was a challenge in itself. Yeah. So we got Centre of Excellence status, and then they brought in the EPPP system. So we'd got all this work to get Centre of Excellence status, then the EPPP come in, which was a whole new ball game together, because it's like based on facilities. It's not just your programme you're running. So we then had to get EPPP Category 3 status. So again, which was really, really difficult. Yeah. But by then, you know, we had a few more staff on board,
Sure.
And it was tough because everything's got to be documented, and because we were creative in what we did, you know, so even the two-footed thing, you got to document why you're doing it, how you're doing it. So, and we were very creative in our thinking, because we had to be, because again, I go back to the same thing. If we're running a similar program to everyone else, why are you going to have success?
Yeah.
So, you know, we had different kind of hook lines, Jimmy, really. So we're, you know, Wimbledon, our nicknames are Dons. So we had better Dons make better people.
Yeah.
So that was kind of our cultural hook line, and we had lots of things going on around that.
Yeah.
Then we had Winners Do More, which was kind of our player ownership program, you know, and that was encouraging players to take ownership of their own development as well as the program would give them.
Yeah.
And then we had the kind of technical two-footed program, which incorporated, you know, stuff that I'd learned from your dad as well, and curve coaching. So, and you just, but having those processes and those sort of really, how can I put it, succinct headings that we worked under allowed us to continually add layers, you know, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So even when I did the youth team, you know, around like the Winners Do More and around better Dons make better people, you know, every year I'd get the youth team to read a certain book, and that would form part, you know, so we read Legacy, the All Blacks, you know, and that led into cleaning the dressing rooms, and that filtered down. And because we had a mentorship program from the 18s down to the young ones, all this stuff filtered down, and it just made us stronger culturally. And, you know, and I'm really proud that when coaches come into our environment, you know, and I've had, you know, I can give you Justin Cochrane, who's with England now and Spurs, you know, he come in and it's like, wow, Wimbledon boys are different, Robert. And they were, you know, and that's where our success come from, because I believe we educated our boys in a certain way and they were different. And it's so many coaches, Chelsea coaches come in and said the same. It was almost become, Wimbledon boys are different, just in the way they held themselves, because our social psychological program, I believe, was above anything in the country. You know, in terms of ownership, I sent youth teams to take games on their own, you know, so no coaches. So literally went with a physio.
Wow.
Yeah.
What age group would that
Under
have
18.
Under 18?
Yeah, and they did logistics, they did everything, and, you know, and I got some ridicule from it, as in, you know, but people didn't understand the process behind it. It wasn't a gimmick. We didn't just send a team away. It was part of a process, and it was part of them to make them understand, you know, these lads understand football, Jimmy. They're not stupid, you know, they love the game, and it was trying to make them realise that you don't need the coach for things you think you do, because they become very reliant on coaches, you know, and there's so much they're capable of. And honestly, like, you know, if your viewers go on YouTube, they find the videos and you know, the people go to me, oh, you know, why did you do it, etc., etc. But I had 18 scholars that year, 12 of them are playing professional football.
Wow.
Now, if you look at the national average, that is like 10 times the national average. And can I say that they were better footballers than other academies? Probably not, but I can say that socially, psychologically and mentally, in terms of resilience, they were on a different level.
Wow.
And that's what got them careers.
So the player ownership bit, Robbo, I'm thinking about our grassroots team, under 13, boys Saturday side, girls Sunday side. Yeah. We don't really introduce, you know, I take training, or my sort of co-coach takes training, we take match days, we do the warm-up. Yeah. What are the little things that grassroots coaches could learn by this player ownership idea, and what could they implement into their sessions or their pre-match or their matches?
So we started with the warm-ups was the simplest thing to get that in, because, you know, in terms of my mindset, the warm-up is the start of the game, right? That's when the game's starting. Yeah. That's when you're preparing to go into battle and whatever. So it started with the warm-up, and I still find it fascinating now. You know, I don't want to digress, Jim, but we talk about professionalism, right? Yeah. And if you talk about me, the ultimate professional takes care of himself, right? And the coach there is to guide him and influence him in certain ways. Yeah. You know, and you watch professional football now, first teams at the top level do the same warm-up week in, week out. And I find it fascinating that they have to have someone standing there clapping, telling them when to sprint. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because for me, that you're preparing for the game. And I've done loads of work with individual athletes who don't have people to lean on, individual sports. And I just find these things, in football, we put it under professionalism because we're giving them everything. I see it very differently.
Yeah.
It's about what you give them and what you don't give them. And I think if you develop players who aren't reliant on coaches and they have intrinsic motivation to constantly improve, and we've already had that conversation, your visit to Barcelona, who are the ones who have gone on, and it's the ones who have got that self-drive. So, you start with warm-ups, you then take it just generally into the way you coach by not giving them the answers all the time and asking questions. And I just think it's just an approach of not wanting quick fixes. So when you go into your session, and like we've said, you want some chaos around your session, don't fix it as a coach straight away. You can't go, oh yeah, I love chaos, but then you want to fix it for the players straight away. You know what I mean? You've got to let them try and fix it, and then you might pull one of them out and say, what are you seeing now? And he says, I can't find space. And then you ask them, well, what might that, what? And if they haven't got the answer, you might give them a little, why don't you try this? And then they try something, and then you pull them back out again. How did that feel? No, that felt good. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Rather than stop, stand still, you stand there. He doesn't know why he's standing there. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. But it gives you a quick fix, and you have success. As a coach, you pat yourself on the back, but you're not doing the job you're meant to be doing.
So when you talk about maybe step one, the warm-up, do you let the players sort that out? Or do you say, Captain, you're taking the warm-up? Or do you let them...
I think, you give them guidance on what a warm-up would look like, because obviously you want them prepared for the game, and obviously that looks different through the ages. And then like you said, then you might give a little bit of leadership to one of the players. Yeah. But you got to be careful. Everyone's different, and people talk about leadership, and I think when we talk about leadership straight away, we think the noisiest or the one who loves to chat. Yeah. But leadership can come in different ways. It can come. I had lads at Chelsea who were very quiet, but they led in the way they performed. So you've got to be very careful. You're not always going to get leaders in terms of he's the loudest. That's not someone's personality, but at the same time you want them to show leadership in other ways in their performance. So I had a lad at Chelsea, this is older age groups, around the processes. He was never going to be a shouter and a hollower, but he used to have his own, he used to run alongside players and just say, I love that. You know what I mean? Little things. Do you know what I mean? But he went from saying nothing to just that. It was making him comfortable in terms of, well, what does it look like to you? So I think, like you said, start with warm-ups. You can give it to individuals, but then don't just give it to the one who gives you the best warm-up. Like try and spread it. But make sure, for me, anything you do, Jim, it's about high challenge but high support. Yeah. If you have high challenge and no support, you can have a detrimental effect on their development. But you certainly, if you have low challenge and high support, which I see at a lot of academies, you have a detrimental effect. Yeah. And not just a detrimental effect on their development as football. If I go back to my remit when Nigel come in, effect of people. Because fundamentally, football, I don't want to go down that road of talking about short careers, because I think football, our terminology is so poor that we use in football, and it leads to many poor actions and behaviours, because we talk about retirement and short careers. Like, the word retirement should be banned from football. You're 35, right? You've got most of your life to live, yet we talk about these really poor terminology. But what I think is it's getting that balance of high challenge and the high support. That for me is the balance you're looking for, where you're stretching them but you're not breaking them. And that's the skill of a coach.
Going back to the leadership point, Robert, it makes me think about sort of what I've seen in our grassroots teams and what I've seen from other teams as well at our age level. And it's interesting, right? Because I think at the grassroots you do have mixed ability and often mixed attitude or mixed focus. And we got caught in the scenario of, don't do that, stop messing about, and you repeat yourself the whole time, because there is mixed focus, mixed ability. Even at that level, you get the emergence of certain personalities in the team that they self-correct that. those players then pull everyone else into line. Nothing to do with the coach.
Yeah.
They then begin to set the standards. And I think that's probably also what you're saying about the ownership bit, where I'm thinking about myself, like, stop messing about, stop doing that, stop.
Yeah.
And now I can give that to the player to make sure that the training session goes in a certain way.
And I think the issue, you know, and I haven't had that so much, Jim, but, you know, because when I went in at Wimbledon, my remit was to kind of get it to an elite standard, so I didn't have that differentiation between mixed ability and, you know, but there was certainly a fallout where possibly lads who didn't want to take it quite so serious, unfortunately we had to release them, but we didn't release them. We did everything in a real humane way. So I haven't got the experiences that you've got, but what I would say is, by giving them that ownership and responsibility, I do feel you will see an emergence of behaviour. But I'd also say it's not easy. Doing it that way is not easy. But for me, if you always go for the shortcut, you're never going to really see that development. And I honestly believe, you know, kids come with all varying different personalities, attention spans, all those things. But if your go-to is always going to be, well, I'll just tell them, or I'll just close them down, you're never going to see development. And I believe, in my experience, that if you believe it and you're consistent, I'm not saying it's not hard work, it is hard work, and it can be frustrating, especially when, you know, your coaches at the end of the day, you want to see a level of session, of course you do, but you have to play the long game. And if you play the long game, I think you can see such dramatic behavioural change. And that's fundamentally, you know, you look up the definition of a coach, and it's to inspire behaviour change. It's not to talk about 4-4-2 and 4-3-3. That is what you're doing. You're inspiring behavioural change, and you know, but you got to play the long game. So Robert, talk about so Wimbledon, obviously you got to the academy level. You established the 3 category for the EPPP. And then what happened? Because obviously then you kind of had a brilliant experience as manager of the club as well. How did that happen? It was just, you know, I loved development. I loved every single bit about it. Never had any real ambition to be a head coach. You look, of course you do. You're around it, and you look, and you might wonder, I wonder how I would do, but no massive ambition, because I love developing players and people. But then Wally Downs come in as Wimbledon manager, and he asked me to stop doing the youth team, and he wanted me to set up a loans department. So he said, you can't do the loans department and this. And I was like, okay. And it was hard for me because I love doing the youth team. And he said, but he didn't want the young pros playing under 21s football. He wanted them going out on loan and experience men's football. And he challenged me, and he was like, well, you know, you've started this academy from scratch. Do you really care about it? Or, you know, he pricked my conscience a little bit. Wally was great. And I was like, no, of course I care. You know, he kind of almost wanted to, of course I care. I want the, well, I'm telling you, if these lads for me go on loan, we're going to produce more pros. So I went, okay. So I handed over the youth team to a young coach, which was great for his development. And I set up a loans department. And that obviously brought me closer to the first team. And I didn't really do a lot around the first team, but I would take the players who weren't in the squad, which again, you know, they call it the bomb squad, and I try to change the mentality on that, because again, you've got all this, you know, it'd be, oh, you take the bomb squad. I mean, that's really inspiring for them to be cool. So I changed the mentality on that for those 3-4 players I had, and you know, I said, right, you're the development squad, ready to get back in there and prove a point. But so it brought me closer to the first team. Wally unfortunately lost his job. Then his assistant Glyn took over, and Glyn brought me a little bit closer, even more so. So I did a little bit more, and then Glyn got the sack. So the club were on a bad run. They had 11 straight losses, and it was quite weird actually, because they asked me to step in interim. Of course, I've been at Wimbledon for 18 years, so I probably know 20% of the fan base personally. You know, so and they were like, no, don't take the job. It's the worst squad we've ever had. We're going down. Just accept we're going down, because if we go down and we lose you, then we haven't got you in the academy. And I was kind of like, well, I kind of think I can have an impact here. So yes, I did it interim, and we had 21 games to go, and I think we lost 5 of the last 21. Stayed up, And then the following season, the club made a choice to go like really young. And I look back, it was wrong. It wasn't wrong in terms of what they wanted to do. I mean, the club, Jimmy, they'd sold academy players, but they'd never sold a first team player. So they're a fan-owned club, limited resources. And even though every manager who'd managed had done a fantastic job, there was no money coming in from player sales apart from academy. So, because what had happened in those 21 games I took over, I'd brought in some players, young players people hadn't heard of. And all of a sudden they're going, where's he coming? And I'm going, well, he's going to be worth money. And some of the senior pros all of a sudden were performing better. And, but the balance wasn't right. It was too young. Unfortunately. And we got off to a great start, unbelievable start, but then we sold players, we lost players to injury and the balance shifted. Yeah. But, in that period I was in, we did nearly £4 million worth of business, which for a club of Wimbledon's size was massive, Huge, So, there was the downside to it because the squad wasn't strong enough and there wasn't enough senior guys in there.
Yeah.
But we did sell lots of assets and, made money for the club.
Is there, because obviously, Robbo, head coach, professional club, are there any things that jump out in terms of advice or lessons learned that you think are applicable to the grassroots game? Maybe around communication or management or... Yeah,
I'm trying to think. I mean, on a personal, I didn't have any self-preservation, so that was a negative. I was so indebted in the club and I knew the club was financially struggling that I had no self-preservation for myself. I kind of, there were things I should have asked for that I didn't.
Yeah.
But whether that relates to grassroots, probably not. But in terms of the biggest thing I'd say, and it's probably going off topic a little bit, Jimmy, if you've got a grassroots setup, you've still got processes to improve these players. And people talk about managing up. Now, whatever your grassroots setup is, you're still going to have like a club secretary and whatever.
Yeah.
And what I'd say is, I think the whole managing up thing's a bit of a myth. I think you can influence behaviour, right? But what I would say is, if you've got a grassroots club, make sure your direction and what you want to do is coming from the top down. Because I don't believe if you're the under-12 coach and you've got someone who may be the secretary of a club, sees things very, very differently to you. I'm not sure. Because there's egos everywhere. I don't care what level of football it is, right?
Yeah.
So I think you've all got to make sure you're on the same page.
Yeah.
And you see that in the Premier League now, right? There's been an incident recently where someone did something and I said to my mates, that's it. That's the beginning of the end. And they go, no. And it is because I'm not... because when you're dealing with anyone in a certain position in a job and they've got certain beliefs, they've got those beliefs for a reason. So if your beliefs are different and, let's say you wanted to introduce a bit more of a player ownership program and the guy there thought it was a load of nonsense, you're not going to have a player, So I would say it's got to come from top down. That doesn't mean you can't influence each other. Of course you can. You can all learn if you go. But I would say that would be my biggest thing. It doesn't matter about the level. Make sure you know what direction you're going in as a club. And I would say, even at Wimbledon when we were grassroots, from when Nigel appointed me, there was a clear direction in the way we was going.
Yeah.
So when you come up against the adversity, and maybe I had the parents who kind of didn't want to go along with that, it's natural. You go, well, okay, maybe this isn't right for you, and so maybe you and your son might be better off going to that club.
Yeah.
And that's part of it as well. So I think, that I would say that's key. You've got to have that alignment.
Especially, I think, at the grassroots level and at the pro level in youth football with the parents. Robert, I'm thinking when you're talking, I'm thinking, God, that's so applicable to parents.
Yeah.
They've got to be on the same page. They've got to be made aware of what you're trying to do. They've got to be supportive broadly of what you're trying to do.
And then you've got all the detail around, building connections and attachment. And I had to do that at Wimbledon because, when you've got a clear direction in what you want to go, you're not brainwashing people, but you're making them understand why you're going in that direction.
Yeah.
So, if you build those connections with people and you make people clearly understand what you're doing, I think, people will then roll with it. and you go, look, this isn't going to be immediate. The success we're going to have, it's going to take a little bit of time, and then you've got the support of the players, and it's a complicated journey for coaching, But my big thing though, Jim, if you want to have a real serious impact, you're not going to do it by being safe. That's my biggest message, and I always used to say to the coaches at Wimbledon, if we sit in a room and someone comes up with an idea and everyone goes, oh, that's brilliant, it's probably not going to have a lot of effect. If I'm being honest.
What, you want a challenging view?
I think if I'm sitting in a room and you come to me and you go, Robert, I've had this idea and it makes me a little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's probably, and makes me think, yeah, but Jimmy, what about this? What about that? It could be the idea that takes us to the next level. Because anything, if you come and went, oh, I just thought this, and I went, oh yeah, love that, do that. It's like, it's probably just, it's not doing a lot. And I'll give you an example. Michael, a really creative guy who's academy manager now at Wimbledon, you probably know Mike. Yeah. He said to me once, he said around our mentorship program, he wanted to take that to another level. He said, so how do you feel on the home games with the youth team that, rotationally the 9s, 10s come in on a match day and you sit with them and you talk to them about the game and you tell them, you give them the players IAPs, which is their individual action plans, or ILPs, individual. So they all get a player to look at.
Yeah.
And they go down into the dressing room before the game, sit with the player. And there was various layers to it.
Brilliant.
So I'm going, okay. So I'm quite open-minded, as you know, but I've got James, my assistant, who's, doing fantastic, by the way. He's working in the championship as a coach, but at the time he's my assistant. So he's got an incredible winning mentality. So I can tell him thinking, well, I'm not sure about this, So, and even me, it's making uncomfortable. So I'm thinking before a game, I'm sitting there with the under-9s, and I said, okay. So there was mixed. What I'm saying is there was mixed reaction in the room, because at under-18s level, obviously winning's important now, and you're asking the lads to be sitting with these youngsters. So I said, okay, well, come back with me the advantages and whatever. Yeah. And he come back with all the what he felt the potential outcomes were, the nurturing aspect and all this stuff. And anyway, we run with it, and it was brilliant, Jim. Brilliant. It made me realise that you spend so much energy before a game you don't need to spend thinking about stuff that's totally irrelevant. So I was so calm before a game because I'm sitting with these great kids talking football and they're coming up with all the, Robbo, what about it? All these things. I'm sending them down to the dressing room, totally relax the lads because they're now, talking to these lads and building up their nurturing skills. And these little lads are looking up. They're loving it. So all of a sudden the under-18s environment to them is something they've experienced at 9, 10, 11, 12. So then when, so we had periods where, I did a 13-year-old, he's now coming up to me. And, because it's every step up you make in football is a bit daunting. But they'd already got used to me a little bit. Do you know what I mean? So it meant that I'm building bigger connections with these younger players because I always used to go down to training anyway. Yeah. And it was one of the great, and that's what I'm saying, But if you'd looked at, there's so many reasons you could have come up with why not to do it. Yeah. But it was one of the best things we did.
I assume also, Robert, it would strengthen sort of the players' resolve and identity, like how they're linked to the club, what they're fighting for.
Exactly,
there's so many.
We were so big, like AFC Wimbledon fan-owned club. Our community thing was so strong, and the culture of the club was so strong, and it just built that stronger. Like where we were all in it together to make AFC Wimbledon as successful as possible. Brilliant. So it just built that, and on the back of it, the lads formed such relationships that we did have some of the youth team lads were then giving up their time and going to training of an evening. Yeah. And like nurturing
helping
players.
Out.
Helping out. And it was fantastic. And there was lots of things. And it goes back to the sock thing. I could have had loads of reasons not to do it. Even people go, oh, but it looks stupid not having the same colour because they didn't like how it looked aesthetically. You know what I mean? So, but and that's a big thing. It's I think you've got to have people out there who are willing to stretch boundaries.
Yeah. And challenge the norm.
Challenge the norm. I think I might be wrong on this, but I think it's Dyson. Yeah. Dyson always has room for young inventors. because his argument is that, you know, if you've got just senior inventors, they come up against so much failure, they almost have a mental block. Whereas if you have young inventors, they come in, they think they can do anything. Now, it doesn't mean they can, but they now and again, they come up with an idea and you go, blimey, we can do this. Does that make sense? So
definitely,
if you have a room just full of the same people who have just done the same process, so you need that fresh ideas coming in, those challenges.
I think as we all get a bit older, Robert, it can creep into your own life as well, about maybe being a bit more closed to ideas and the injection of younger ideas, younger people. You know,
and you become fear-based, Jim, as well. You know, I had things at first team level where when I went in and things were going great, I felt like Superman. I felt like every decision I made, I felt bold. And then when, like, due to circumstance, results changed a bit, I become fear-based. And if I'm honest, if I was ever going to change that situation, and it was probably difficult because we'd lost so many players, but what would have got out of it would have been coming up with, do you know what I mean? Because that's what I did when I kept us up. It was that I played a shape I'd never played before. Because fundamentally there was 4 players I needed to get on the pitch, but I couldn't get them on the pitch in certain positions because that weren't their best. So I went to a shape I'd never played purely to get those 4 players on the pitch because I knew we'd score goals. So, and that's the kind of thinking you need when you come up against problems. Does that make sense?
Definitely, Robert. And honestly, you, as a grassroots coach, you also have a fear sometimes. What the parents going to think, what the grandparents going to think. You know, you can also, it's not the same, our livelihoods aren't at stake. But having said that, you do feel like an anxiety around, God, how am I going to do this?
It's 3-3, and you're telling yourself it doesn't, and there's something you want to do, or you might want to put on a player of a lesser ability, and you're going, if we lose this, am I going to? But you have to, you got to do it.
But we've got time, Robbo. Like, obviously at that part of the game, you haven't got any time. You need to win that game. And Chris Ramsey made a great point last time. He said you've got to look at it through a longer lens, through the lens of the season, or 2 seasons, or 3 seasons, not on that game day. And I think the temptation for grassroots coaches is to think about game day only.
And even professional football, it's a merry-go-round, Jimmy. I think, like in England now, the average tenure of a manager, head coach, is 11 months. Now you can go on seminars and you'll go on these things and they talk about processes and cultures and learning behaviours. Yet the average tenure is 11 months. Who's gonna develop all these things in 11 months? And it's because fundamentally a lot of it's knee-jerk. It's knee-jerk reaction. So you never get past that fight stage to actually see the genuine growth, because a lot of the growth is taking place where you can't always see it. So you never get to see something flourish. Whereas you look at there's certain clubs that I've visited in the Premier League that are very calm and very well run through what they do. And that's why they're having lots of success, because it's not based on knee-jerk emotion. And it's tough because we all love football, right? And you certainly don't want to take the emotion out of the game, because that's what makes it wonderful. But our job as coaches and that is to see through that. You know,
guys, Jimmy here from the podcast. We've just launched the new Curva Coaching app. It's on iOS and Android stores right now. Please download it. Coaches, you've got fantastic material for you to work in your next practices. We'll save you the time from scrolling through YouTube to piece together your session. It's all there for you. It's all we've learned over 40 years. You're ready to go. Download now, please. You can also tell your parents and your players, the parents of the players in your team, to download the app as well, because there's a players hub in there. And in the players hub, it's a step-by-step skill tutorial of how to do the Curva coaching moves and ball masteries. And also what you'll get from there is a ability for them and their parents to track the improvement of their skills. And it solves the problem of they're probably only with you once a week at training. This is now their sort of homework at home, or their challenges at home, with fun challenges and skill tutorials to improve, so they can do that additional work that's required for them really to take the next step. Go download the app now, and back to the pod. The point back before the quick break that you were making about the almost calmness and time that, like, some of these great Prem clubs, that's the situation there. I was so lucky last week, and I was telling you about the Barcelona visit that we did, and it's certainly the impression you get at that brilliant club. Like, there's time to do this, and this is the way we do it, and it's a calm. It seemed like a calm, hyper competitive environment, but it seemed like a calm environment too.
Are we back online?
Yeah, we're back on.
Oh, right. So,
we're back on.
And that's what I've experienced. I've had a little bit of time out now before I go back in, and I've made sure I've been visiting clubs, and that's what you see. I've visited some clubs that are punching way above their weight, and it's calm. And I think people, when you talk about this in football, because as I said, we love it. We love football because we're so passionate about it, and it's an emotional game. And but so when you start talking about calm and that, it's like, oh no. But you have to. You can't have people coming to work stressed, because then it hinders any creative thinking. And you've got to have accountability. Of course, you've got to have accountability. We're all accountable, but you've got to do it in an intelligent way.
Sure.
And what you notice with these clubs is that's what they've got.
Yeah.
They can recognise. Football's a very random game, Jimmy. And obviously the better players you've got, the slightly more in control you are. But someone said to me, you won't want to hear this as a coach, but 50% of football is random. And I was like, okay.
Does that mean luck, or is that something different to luck?
Kind of a bit mixture of both. Well, what he said was, you've got you've got officials' decisions, which you got no control of. And I know you've got VAR at Premier League, but managing in League One, trust me, you get a lot of decisions where you go, really? And you look back and it went against you. So you've got that. And even VAR, there's still decisions, there's still loads of controversy. So you've got that, where you've got no control of. It's a game of so many actions, and he used the example of basketball. He said, you can play basketball because it's a high-scoring game. A player could make 5 errors and you still win that game 78-72. Yeah. Football, because it's a low-scoring game, 1 error or 1 incredible action can have such an impact on the result. So you could do so many things well and be winning 1-0 and the fans are loving it, but you might have missed 4 or 5 chances. And then someone does something incredible through 1 action. You draw the game. Everyone's mood drops. Everyone's gone from going, oh, we're brilliant, to, oh, that's disappointing. That's 2 points drop. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And he said, your job is to cut through the emotion and just look at what really matters. So, they had ways of measuring performance and knowing that, no, we hit where we needed to hit. Yeah. It's just some random action that stopped us maybe getting the 3 points that on another day that performance will bring. And then you can take those, and if there's things you look at and you go, well, we do need to improve that, you take those into training. And he said, but when teams go on good runs, bad runs, it's never quite what it looks like. A team could be on a good run, but underlying performance could actually tell them that they're only really on that run because maybe the centre forward is having an absolute great spell. If he drops off, then,
it's gonna
it could change. I'm doing a little bit of consultancy for a club at the moment, and I just said, you need to make sure you've got cover for this player. Yeah. Because they're doing well, but if he gets injured, 50% of your effectiveness is going to drop because he's so key right now to your performance. Yeah. And you saw that with Man City, right? Yeah. Rodri got injured. Yeah. Pep wins 1 game in 14. Yeah. Now, if I said to you at the start of the season, Pep Guardiola is going to win 1 game in 14, you'd go, well, is the whole squad is the whole squad going to get depleted? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. But one player who was so effective in terms of what they do, it's such a dramatic effect.
Do you think? Again, I'm trying to think about the parallels with grassroots football, and I'm trying to also think about the way we play, and we do kind of play in one way. Do you think it's appropriate for grassroots teams to think about a plan B and a plan C, Robbo, or are you just, is that too? Would that be overthinking it?
I think you need a really robust and resilient plan A, a flexible plan A. Plan A, yeah. I'm not sure, and I know people won't agree with this, but it's a big thing in football, isn't it? When things aren't working, they go, "Where's his plan B? Where's his plan?" Yeah. But what you've got to realise, and I'm talking top end now, if you're selling something to players, which you're doing, and inspiring to play a certain way, and you take into account, we are saying results are quite random, and you're trying to build something over a period of time, and maybe results aren't working, you then go and try and sell the players something completely different on a plan B, and bearing in mind the results are random and the result still doesn't come, it's very then players will look for an excuse anywhere, right? And then they're looking, going, well, what are you? Are we this or are we that? So I think you've got to have a really strong plan A, but I think there needs to be some flexibility within that.
Okay.
And I think the players need to understand that.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, if you talk about my time in League One, because of my development background and because of probably the style of play the teams played,
Yeah.
I got hit with certain remits.
Yeah.
And if I'm honest, the level of player sometimes you're working with, it's very difficult. Now, we did have highs where we hit that, but I should have been a little bit more like, no, but there needs to be some flexibility in here as well, because, you know, if you sell a player, you have injuries, there's got to be flexibility within that.
Yeah,
you
sure.
know, and you might get away with it more at the top level where you're replacing like for like all the time.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but you know, but you can see it happen all the time. Certain players can really influence performance in certain ways.
Yeah. That's, I think the random factor is something you see but you don't recognise, even in grassroots, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and I think Lady Luck can play a big part of that.
Yeah.
Obviously, the grassroots factor you've got as well is officiating. Referees are doing a brilliant job, but they're volunteers and they often don't have assistant referees.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of randomness, and it is quite difficult, even at the grassroots level, to manage the emotion of a difficult loss.
And if you're a positive, which I'm sure you are, and you know the performance has been strong and you haven't won and you're still coming, you know, you get that cynicism, Mr. Positive, and we've lost again. But you have to be able to look through it.
Yeah.
And if you know the performances are strong and there's a lot going on that's right, you just have to, you do have to stay calm. By the same token, you can't be delusional. You're losing every week and you're going, no, we played great, because, you know, and you're missing the key things. You know, it's
got to be credible.
It's got to be,
because everyone works it out. Even young kids, they work it out immediately.
And that's what I had, you know, when I had that under 9, under 10, before we went into 11-a-side, and I was doing things that others weren't doing, as I said, getting the goalkeeper to mark the centre forward, and you lose. It was credible. I had to make it credible and explain, but you have to trust me here. Me dropping one of our outfield players back to mark this lad who's goal hanging, basically, because there's no offside or play, is not relevant. You have to trust me. And, you know, and I realise it's frustrating because you all want to go home feeling good about the win, but it has no relevance, you know, and because football is about, as I said, creating overloads, finding space, 1v1s, all the things that we work on, but they could see lots of success, you know, and it was just taking that frustration away.
Robert, you told me at the coffee when we were having a coffee before the pod that there's 3 ways. I can't remember if you said to get up the pitch or to. Can you just talk about those 3 ways?
Yeah, because I just think, you know, we're going through. You read things now. I think we're going with football. You kind of, there's that opinion. People are finding football a little bit chess-like. You know, they're going, it's a bit. You know, you get. Let's be honest. As a fan, you get excited when the ball's around the penalty area. Yeah. Right. Yeah. What goes on in between for most fans is a little bit. Sometimes you go, that was great, but that's when fans get excited, is when it's around the. And I think the ball's spending a lot of time away from the goal right now, and you're hearing fans going, it's not very exciting. It's not. It's becoming very, very tactical. And then you've got other people who love that side of the game going, but I love the build and that. And it's just me. This is my opinion. There's always 3 ways of playing football. You play through teams, you play round teams, and you play over teams. So my personal preference is to develop players that make great decisions based on the pressure. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I believe if a team is incredibly aggressive pressing, say Liverpool on a Champions League night at Anfield, and you think you're going to play through their press, I think there's enough evidence to show you're a bit foolish. Yeah. And how many times did Liverpool, you know, after 20 minutes, they're 2-0 up? I think they were the other night, 3-0. Yeah. Because it's tough, right? You know, you're asking a player to receive it. John Terry did something the other day about it under Mourinho. He said, like, now, and, you know, we're talking about a top player, 2-footed, technically excellent. He said, you know, there'll be times Petr Cech's got the ball and I see they're set up for an aggressive press and I'm going, no. Miss it out, play into Ivanovic, we'll play out there. Other times I've got time, of course I'll have the ball. Yeah. And I think it can be dangerous if you go, no, this is the way we play. my personal view is, if you can develop players to recognise to play those three ways constantly based on pressure.
Yeah.
And I think if you look at Liverpool recently, they do that. You know, they've always got the chance of going over. You look at Pep, how he's adapted with the Premier League.
Mm-hmm.
Would he have signed Haaland when he was at Barcelona?
Yeah.
I'm not so sure.
Yeah.
But he's recognised the Premier League. We need that release. We need that pace.
Yeah.
Over the top. You know, and I think it's recognising that. So, you know, although Man City played great football, I think it's a different kind of football to what he played at Barcelona, where it was so possession based that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now they're more than happy to go in one.
Yeah.
And so I look at possession. Possession is the ball goes from me to one of my teammates. Now, whether it goes in one or it goes in 31 passes,
it
doesn't matter. But it's about why you're doing it.
Interesting.
And you're and fundamentally you're passing the ball to move the opposition. You're not passing the ball just to pass the ball, right?
Yeah.
You know, if I'm passing it, you're doing it to move the opposition to create space. Now, if that space is in behind, and then that space is in behind. So that's how I see it.
Yeah. So Robert, going back to sort of your journey from Wimbledon, you went to Chelsea. Talk a little bit about sort of that experience and also what you learned from it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the work I did at Wimbledon, it was great to be recognised and get that opportunity.
Yeah.
To go to Chelsea. I still had to go through an interview process when, again, you talk about taking yourself out your comfort zone. So I had to do an hour's presentation to Thomas Tuchel and Petr Cech. So again, if I look back at my previous learning experiences, you know, that's quite a big thing, right?
Yeah.
You know, and I remember Thomas arrived, it was the end of the season, and he gave me 3 targets. One was don't go over the hour. The second one was I want to learn at least 2 things, and I always forget the third one for some reason. I can't remember. You go, okay, you know. So you got, and I honestly believe if I hadn't have done those things that I've done, like, you know, the tour guiding, you know, you still listen. But your belly still flips, but you kind of learn to cope with that pressure. And you know, I don't mind saying I know I smashed my presentation, which helped get me the job. And then it was a totally different experience from what I experienced at Wimbledon. You're now, well, funny enough, I took over the under-21s, and they'd actually it was perfect really, because they'd nearly got relegated the season before, which is unheard of for Chelsea. They literally stayed up the last kick of the game of the season. So my boss was kind of, look, we're Chelsea. The biggest thing is we can't get relegated. That's the biggest thing. They didn't think it was a strong group, but he did give me sort of carte blanche to do what I believe, which was great. Going into Chelsea, I thought it would be, you know, this is how we do this is how we do that. And they did have ways of doing things, but he said, I've brought you in to do what you do. Right. So do what you do, which was amazing. But I remember my first day, I was ready to present to the staff. And, you know, again, I think, these things are running through your head. There's some ideas I know that they probably haven't experienced. You're thinking, right, you know, deliver with confidence, blah, blah, blah. You've got to get everyone's buy-in. And I'm ready to go, and in walks John Terry. And I was, hi, Rob, I'm sorry. And I've never met John. Now you've got one of my heroes. I'm a Chelsea fan by birth. My family been going since the 1940s. Now I'm delivering to John Terry as well, you know, and but he was brilliant. Like they you know, and again, having that confidence to deliver how I saw development and how we were going to go. And my big thing is player last, player first. And everyone was brilliant. And we had, you know, I think we went 5 months unbeaten. It was the longest unbeaten run they'd had for 23 years. More importantly, they saw a real increase in development of players like going into levels higher than they thought they would. I think we had 5-6 debuts. And that was great. And but then also other things, you know, I used to see Claude Makalea every morning and have a cuddle and all surreal stuff, you know, because he was a great guy. And he used to come out and watch training, and, you know, my mates were all Chelsea fanatics, and I was having these daily experiences with my heroes, you know. But at the same time, you're going, no, I'm a football coach here, you know, I'm not a fanboy. But it was great, and got to coach, you know, as well as some great young lads that I had, you know. I had Aubameyang for like a month, Lukaku for a month at least, Hudson-Odoi, Ross Barkley, N'Golo Kante come in from, so I'd like these top players. And what I was really pleased with, Jim, if I'm honest, was I think when you've got, you get told these players are coming over to train with you because they're not part of the squad, etc. So you're thinking, okay, where's their head? Yeah. And it's very easy, I think, to, I have processes I really believe in terms of development for the young players I was coaching. And I think it would have been very easy to maybe step away from that because you're thinking, I don't want to feel like these World Cup winners, etc. I'm teaching them to suck eggs. But I didn't. I took time to explain to them that I've got things I do that are really fundamental for these lads' development. So I'll be grateful if you could buy, honestly. And again, building that connection with them, they were brilliant. Because at the same time, I made it clear, anything you need, whatever. And the sessions went through the roof. Because you look and you go, oh, that potentially could be a tricky situation. You've got players not in the first team squad coming down to train with you. But they bought into everything. And that goes back to what I was saying in the coffee shop. Fundamentally, they all turn into kids and love football. Try and give you a good example is I think football's very habitual and we let cliches rule our state of mind. And I've talked to a lot of top senior pros about this. Like when you're 2-0 up, the big thing is next goal's vital. And I've actually talked to top pros and said, does that play on your mind that if they get the next goal, make it 2-1? And they went, oh, yeah, you definitely, it's in your psyche, and how these things can affect what you do, So instead of staying on the front foot, you get a bit cautious. So I've looked at all these different things that we say. So one is you're at the most vulnerable after you score, right? And you go, well, why? That's just been something that's happened. But it's not there's no reason other than there's a different change of state of mind, right? So you've gone from attack, dominating, the opposition are now, we're 1-0 down, we've got to do something about this. So there's a change in how you're thinking. So we had various processes, and one of them, I can't really explain it, but I built this analysis brick wall, basically, analogy. So it was all about behaviours and football actions. And one of the bricks was to be the most dangerous after we score. And one of the processes in training was, when we went to the games, if you scored a goal in the game, if you didn't have the next big chance, if the opposition had the next big chance, your goal got wiped away. So basically it was getting the players to think, after we score, what does it now look like? What are we doing? So, it might be, we're going mid-block, they're not playing for us and we're going to hit you on the counter. It might be, no, we think we've got you, so we're going all out press again. But at least it was getting them thinking, because if you do watch a lot of games, you watch a team score, more often than not, the opposition do have the next big chance, right? So, anyway, I've done this, I've got these guys. So I've explained, and I've got Aubameyang going to me, why, boss, why? So I've explained, I said, because we have to be the most dangerous, not the most vulnerable. And you can see, you think, okay, so anyway, his team scored, and he's going, bang, he's leading the press, like he's getting after him. They've had a cross. He's had a bit of a loopy header gone over the bar. He's running to me going, that's it, 1-0. I went, nah, that's not a big chance. That's like so now he's running even more. Anyway, eventually they score. But that's what I'm saying. His whole enthusiasm for the game come flooding back. He become a leader. And of course, you imagine that effect that has on 17, 18, 19-year-olds to see that. And that's just by putting a simple condition in,
Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, no, of course.
I'm trying to think of what the parallels are in the grassroots game, because they're there as well, right? Yeah. And it's often you go one down, that sort of stuff happens in our game, in that level of the game as well. I'm sure there's other examples. Maybe the audience can write in on the comments what the other examples are.
But I think is why I'm so big on the social psych side of football. Yeah. Because that's what, most of any sport, football, you have to win the battle against yourself, right? That's you have to win the battle. So if we're not developing people socially and psychologically, it doesn't matter how talented they are. And it goes back to what you told me about Barcelona, the story that I told you about the guys. You've got to be winning that battle with yourself and each other, and so much of it is mindset. Yeah. And although I met your dad because I'm massive into technique and obsessed with it, there's still that side. And what you've got to realise, you've got your tactical, you've got your technical, you've got your physical, you've got your social, psychological, but they're all intertwined, Jimmy. They're not separate.
Yeah.
As soon as it's a game of football, they're all there. And that would be another, sorry to go back to your planning, that would be another thing. When you're planning, I think you've got to try and incorporate, and your dad does this brilliantly, is even when you're doing a top-heavy technical session of repetition, I think there's still room to bring in those other elements. Don't let it just be an unopposed technical. Yeah. How can you bring in some social, psychological in there? Yeah. How can you bring? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, of course.
And that's what I've got. The planning sheet I devised was I've got low, medium, and high, and that's in terms of challenge point. So my kind of challenge to the coaches was, when you're planning, if we're doing a high repetition technical challenge, I don't want the technical challenge to be high and everything else low.
Low, yeah.
How can you divide? So at least there's medium. So I do understand if you're doing high repetition technical, it's quite hard to say get the decision-making side really high because you're working, but don't let it be low.
Yeah.
There must be, you think of ways that you can at least get the medium challenge so they're ready when we go into the next part. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Does that
sure.
make sense?
And you can always think, like any practice like that, how can you adapt it to achieve what you're saying?
And my biggest issue is when you've got coaches speaking all the time, the social side, it's like, shut up. They go, the players are quiet. The biggest thing I get with players are quiet now. They don't talk now. Yeah, they are. The phones are having an effect. They are.
Yeah.
But they're not going to change. Fundamentally, we're all born the same as we was always born, right? Our environment then starts to dictate what we become.
Yeah.
So my environment as a young age, when I was 7, 8, 9, dictated that I was tough tackling because that was the situation I was put in. I then got picked up by Fulham, and I had a very technical, heavy coach, brilliant detail, right? But I lost an edge on my other side of my thing because the environment changed. And listen, there's no one way of doing things because we'd all be doing the same thing, right? But you're just trying to find that balance where you're giving them everything, and that is what the beauty of coaching is, right?
And when it comes together like that, it's brilliant, isn't it?
And again, it comes to different thinking. If you said to me, "What's my perfect? What's your utopia?" It is to stand on the line saying nothing, because I know that my education of the players has been so good. They don't need me. Now there might be moments they need me, of course, but that would be my utopia. Other coaches might go, no, I want to run up and down the line shouting. Well, that's fine. Yeah. But I put a strong argument that you're not actually developing the players.
When our grassroots sides, Robbo, were in 5v5 and 7v7, I don't know if they're doing it recently, but the FA had a couple of weekends per season where the coaches and the parents were not allowed to do anything but be enthusiastic and sort of applaud. And you heard a silence basically on the pitch. And then you heard the players communicating with each other and not looking to their dad or mum or to us on the sideline. And I thought it was so beneficial.
It is beneficial. My only counter argument to that is let that be the part of a process anyway. And then you'll really see changes, because nothing works just if you do it. I had it, I won't say, but someone sent off to an army camp. Well, that's not going to, for a week, that's not going to, okay, it's great. And I've seen things like that where they go off to an army camp and they're doing this stuff, but they're not going to come back robust and resilient, right? Just because they've been on an army camp for a while. And then you give them the towels and you give them this and you give them that, and they don't do anything. That's just a moment in time. And you might look back at it, and all it does, it causes frustration, because I've seen coaches go, yeah, but you did that when you was it. Well, of course he did, because he had to, right? So, but if your environment is around more ownership and more stuff, and they're taking responsibility, then you go to an army camp. It might be something that takes it to the next level, because you then return to an environment where you've got a degree of ownership. So, but otherwise, these just one-offs, they're just a moment in time. So it's like when I sent the youth team to run a game on themselves. If I just did that, it's just a gimmick. But because it wasn't, it was part of an ongoing process. It just took it to the next level. So, when they come back to me, I went, okay, come on. And I got them to make a list of things that they really don't need me for. And they went, well, we don't. I'll give you an example. So on the way on the coach, for example, the coach couldn't fit down a road. So they were going to be late. But some boys had made their own way. So they phoned the lads and went, look, can you get the warm-up set up, etc. So they were already thinking. If I'm on the coach, they just let you do everything. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely. Can you talk, when you talked about the army, Robert, can you give our listeners a little example of what you told me before?
Yeah, so a Premier League manager told me the youth team went to an army every year. They went to an army camp. Now, I don't know what their program was, but they did it for a different reason. So they sent them to an army camp, and they gave the instructors, the army instructors, no detail at all on the players, other than here's your players. And at the end of the week, they asked them to say who they thought would have professional careers in the game based on nothing, no information other than how they dealt with the training, the army training, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah.
And he said their success rate in spotting pros was higher than their own scouts.
Amazing.
Purely based on their mentality and stuff, which is quite
Amazing.
Which goes back to your Barcelona thing, and you know, you look at players like Ronaldo and you go, yeah, fantastic talent, but look at the work he's put in to be what he's been. Yeah. You know, and even, you know, Messi. People look at Messi and Ronaldo, and because they're physically different, I think we look at them in different ways. We kind of go, well, one's kind of almost made himself, the other's got this unbelievable talent. But your dad told me a story about Messi. I remember for a Champions League final, like, he's still on the pitch. It was when it was played at Wembley, and I remember your dad telling me, and he had to pull him off the pitch because he was still practicing. Yeah. So he might not be doing the physical stuff but it's the mentality to want to just get better and improve is there all the time.
I was lucky enough in 2006, Robbo, to watch that Argentina side train, and they probably had the potential to win that tournament. I don't even remember. They had Riquelme, Tevez, Messi, Crespo. They're just ridiculous. Yeah. And what was noticeable of the training sessions was the extra work that he did, and also the ball never left his foot. He was juggling all the time. He was, when everyone got water, he was practicing.
Always at one with the ball.
Always touching the ball.
At the one with the ball.
And it was interesting. Yeah. Robert, we've almost...
Both feet as well.
Oh, yeah. Completely. And the head. Do you remember that goal he scored against Man U? Yeah. Good header too.
Well, again, you know, before we finish, again, you look at things that have died out of the game that possibly you and I would have done. Yeah. So diving header has gradually gone out of the game. Yeah. Because the environments have become so structured, it doesn't allow for a diving header. Now, we would have learnt a diving header through playing in the park, last one to score, World Cup, whatever you call it, where that just would happen. Yeah. So the solution to that problem would be to throw my head at it. But now everything's become so structured, you've seen certain skills like that have gone, you know? And so, you know, if you want to say you wanted to bring that back into the game, you've got to bring that back into your environment, you know? Yeah. So.
Okay, Robert, we've only got a couple of minutes. Yes. I wish we had longer, because obviously Chelsea experience was amazing, and I know it must have been incredible as a Chelsea fan to be at the club and inspiring on your journey. But then you got a really great offer for Burton. Yeah. And can you tell the audience about sort of what you learnt there and what happened?
It was very challenging. It was I'd said no 3 times because things were going great at Chelsea, but it was to go and lead a project, or so I was told, a 5-year project, new ownership, things that had never been done before, 23 new players, etc. And it didn't work out for various reasons. But all I would say is, you know, it doesn't really matter why it didn't work. You know, there was lots and lots of circumstances why it didn't work, and a lot of stuff we've talked about in terms of emotion v calm and various things. But the biggest thing I take from it is, you know, I've been coaching 25 years now, and although I didn't want to experience what I experienced there, you know, I've learned more from that 4-month experience than I've learned in the last 25 years about myself, about where to go, where I want to go to next, what I need to be doing, the sort of questions I need to be asking. So again, you know, my big message would be is people would perceive it as failure. You know, so after having a career that I think, you know, I've experienced dips and things, but it's been consistent progression. I've then gone and experienced something that everyone would go, oh, failure. But in many ways, when I look back at it now, based on what's happened since I've gone as well, it wasn't. It certainly wasn't. There was loads of success in there based on the task I had, and I've learned so much from it.
Yeah.
Right? So much that's going to put me in such fantastic stead for the future. You know?
Yeah. No, it's brilliant, Robert. I think your passion, your openness to learning is admirable, and I think that a lot of us grassroots coaches should take that lesson. Like I think we should all try to be open, and we're obviously, that passion for the game runs through. We wouldn't be involved in the game if we didn't all have that passion. Yeah. But
you got to continue to you got to continue to grow.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much. You know, as I said, before that experience, I would have thought I'm quite high up on my learning.
Yeah.
You know, and because of things that happened and whatever, you know, I then thought, wow, I've got so much to learn. And you've always got so much to learn.
Yeah.
And you've got to continue that growth, and you've got to keep putting yourself in situations where you are learning.
Yeah, sure.
You know, if you're in a room and you're the most intelligent person, get yourself in a different room. You know what I mean? And it's key.
Yeah.
You know?
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Robert, thanks so much for your time. Thank
Cheers.
you.
Cheers. Thank you.
Brilliant, mate. Honestly, brilliant.